back in February of 2022, I had a video, and at the end I showed a sneak peek of a new item I'd gotten that I was going to do a repair on. But then the stone collection came along, and that got in the way. So I figured now's the time, because I've got the itch to fix something 8-bit, to take a look at this machine. So, here we go. A Commodore SX-64. I got this machine off of a local marketplace, so it seems to be really nice. I thought it was a pretty good deal. I don't remember what I paid for it, but I want to say it was $150 or so, so not too bad. Keyboard has the cable. Keyboard does have a pretty good sized ding in the label. That's kind of unfortunate, but the keys all look nice. The thing looks pretty good. And then a real nice thing about this particular machine is that when I went to pick it up, the guy says, hey, you can have this to go with it, just for parts. And he brought out this. Another SX-64. No keyboard, no cable, but, you know, it's there. Now, back when I got these, before the stone collection came along, I did some testing. We'll take a look at this one in a minute. It definitely does not work. This one, the screen doesn't work, but if you hook up the output on the back to an external monitor, it actually comes up with a working screen and a flashing cursor. So we have this for parts. It's also pretty dinged up. So for this machine, what I want to do is do a quick test and see how it works. Okay, been a couple years since I powered this up, so let's see what happens. Disk drive spins and then goes off as it should. Got nothing on the screen though. Nope, white screen. So got a little bit of something going on there. Let's see if we can. So I proceeded to start to pull this machine apart, shot some video of it. You're looking at it right here. And, you know, I started just having this nagging feeling. One thing I've always felt strongly about, especially when I was training technicians, if I haven't mentioned it before, I owned an office equipment company for 25 years, is that when you first get into a new machine, you do it by the book. You learn the way the manufacturer says to do it, and then you figure out an easy way. I can't count the times I had a technician spend 2 hours trying to get a machine apart, when if he'd gone by the book, he'd have been done in a half an hour. So yeah, I'm going to use the manual, learn to do it right, so then I can later figure out how to do it efficiently. Now, I've always loved the schematics and that information in the Commodore service manuals, but their idea of what a service manual is and what my idea is are worlds apart. I am used to stuff like this. I mean, this literally goes back to my days, the very beginning of my business, so like 91, 92. This is the HP LaserJet 2 Canon SX engine service manual. And there is a whole section on removals and replacements. How do you take it apart? Well, I decided to do a little research and started looking around. And I find lots of videos with people fumbling and bumbling trying to get these things apart. I find a few videos with people that have done it before who know how to do it properly, but I didn't find anything about the right way to disassemble an SX-64. And this thing is a bit of a beast inside. I mean, everything's packed in. So I've decided to split this video into two parts. This part, part one, is going to be a teardown. We're going to tear it down as I go through it. I've set up the camera. I'm going to get lots of pictures and get a step-by-step procedure on how to take this thing apart. Then, after that, in the next video, I'll actually repair it and get it working. Now, as part of this process, I am going to be tearing this down. If I find myself doing something and realize there's a better way, I will put it back together and reshoot it so you don't have to deal with that. As I'm working, I have the parts machine over here. It has the covers off, but it's fully assembled, so I can refer to that. and try to get this to be as quick and efficient a way to get into an SX-64 as I can. There are then later tricks, which I'll show in the repair video, such as how to replace a PLA without taking the main board out. The back of the machine is the power supply. Then on the right side, looking from the front, there is a CPU board, has the CPU, has the VIC-2, has the SID, has the ROMs. Then there's the I/O board, which has the CIAs and some glue logic on it. There's another board in the back, which is the disk drive board. It's the 1541 floppy controller board. On the front on the right, you have a floppy drive with a storage bin over it, and that bin can be used to store the cord and the keyboard cable, or it can be used to store floppy disks. And then in the front on the left, you have the CRT. This tiny little 5.5-inch color CRT is just a neat little module. Finally, you have a few bits and bobs like the cartridge port and the speaker. But when we're done here, what I hope to have is a video that's useful for anybody out there that wants to get in and pull apart an SX-64 and don't want to watch an hour-long video of somebody doing a repair to see how to take it apart. Then in the next video, we'll do the repair, get it fixed up and running. So let's start taking it apart. Start off with, we'll get the keyboard out of the way. It's just 2 snaps on the top. It comes off. We'll go ahead and pull the cable out, and we'll just set that aside for later. And then I can adjust these to the center. And just get that, I don't want that down, I want it flat. To get the covers off, the first thing you need to remove are these side covers. And those are a piece of cake. There's 2 screws here. Once those screws are out, this cover just slides off to the rear. And you want to be real careful. These are very fragile. You can see. Okay, now the top cover. There are 2 screws here and here, so we'll pull those loose. And then, on the side of the machine, you can see the top cover has 3 screws here. There's 3 on the other side. These screws are for the bottom cover. And that is a flat-headed tapered screw. Those are out, the cover slides to the rear a little bit and then lifts up. It just has a little notch right here that snaps in over that. Now the bottom cover doesn't always need to be removed, but in this case we're going to show how to do it. So to remove the bottom cover, there's a screw right here that holds a bracket that's attached in. So we're going to remove that. Then you're going to flip it over. Now these power supply screws I'm going to reserve because I'm probably going to put them back in here in a second. And then we're going to remove these feet. I'm going to slide it back and lift it up. There are 2 tabs here that lock into this cover. Then I'm going to return these 2 power supply screws to support the power supply because it's got a lot of cables attached to it, and I don't want to strain those cables. And that's all the cover screws, so I'm going to keep them in their own case. For removal of the CPU board, I'm going to start by disconnecting this 5-pin connector. That goes to the video, and then this connector, which is an 8-pin, goes to the external video. Then there are 3 little tabs. I'll insert a picture of these. And what you have to do is use a blunt object. I just usually use a Phillips screwdriver. And glasses are not optional for this for me. So there's an internal pin and an outer collar. So you got to push the internal pin loose. So by pushing that while supporting the board, that pin comes through. You can then pull it back, and that'll come out. And then you have this internal collar, and the collar has to be pushed through. And be careful, these are really easy to lose. So then I also need to loosen up and remove the connections from the I/O board. And there are two 5-pin connectors over here. This is the internal and the external serial ports, so floppy drive and the like. This connector was really tight, so I used some deoxit on it, so now it comes off much easier. And I would recommend using deoxit on most of these when you put them back together. So there's the keyboard, and then this 40-pin ribbon cable is the user port to the back. And then there is a 2-pin here. This is the 9-volt AC. Once that's done, there's one more of the little clips, little pins. So we'll push that through. There we go. And this cable should be routed underneath this board, not over it. I'm not sure why it's coming over the top like that, but it's just not quite put together right. Now there is another ribbon cable on the I/O board, a little difficult to get to. That is connecting to the cartridge port. And then the I/O board has a connector on the end. It connects into a socket on the CPU board. So you literally have to unplug this by pulling it away to the side. So once that's off to the side, it's fairly loose. I can then get it up, get this other connector off. There's the I/O board. And then the CPU board here need to loosen these screws that are holding the power supply. And the reason we're keeping the screws in the power supply is because there's so many little cables here, and when it's hanging loose, this is a chunk of metal. This thing is heavy. And if you have it just flopping loose, I've been warned, thanks Alex, that just leaving that flopping loose can lead to damaged cables. But we need to pull it back and away to get to the board out. I'm going to pull this side off, and pull that back. So now this board here, it's sitting in a slot down on the bottom, and it still has a power connector. So we'll pull this back, get access to this power connector here. Can I lift it out? Yes. Be careful not to damage the bottom of the board against these metal rails. But as you can see, power connector right here. I'm going to move this to the center to get a better view for you. So this power connector has to come off. And you can pull this off before you pull the board out or after. It's very tight. That's going to need some deoxit. There's the CPU board, 6510, SID, PLA. You got your ROMs. Now next I'm going to remove the floppy drive board, floppy drive controller board. And it has a bunch of connections. There's a 2-pin reset connector. This connects to the external reset button. So this is the serial bus. Came from over here to here. Gives you access to the floppy drive. This is the floppy drive controller. So this is all the wires that control the floppy drive. There we go. Wow, that was tight. And then this is the floppy heads. So this is where you could go and check the resistance to see if you got an open head. So once that's done, there are 3 little pins, just like the others. So we'll remove those. All right. So again, being careful to support this, not leave it just hanging. There is one more connector down there. I'm going to get this wire loose so it's not hanging there. And I'm going to pull this out so I can give you a better view of it, but you can connect it, disconnect it the other way. So one more power cable. That one's easy. Not too easy, but easy. All right, this is the floppy drive controller board. Okay, so next I'm going to remove the cartridge port 2 screws. That lifts out. If you still have the controller board installed, you'll need to disconnect that from it. I'm going to leave these longer screws with cartridge port and set that aside. So next I'm going to go ahead and remove the power supply, and looks like all we have is a couple of ground wires down here and one connector left. So I'll go ahead and remove the screws I just put in. Then looks like that's got a nice nifty little twisty job, so I can just disconnect that. And then there are two screws right there. I'm going to remove. Now for these two ground screws, because they have star washers and I want to keep them where they go, I'm just going to put them right back in the holes so I don't lose them. Okay, let's see if we're loose here. One more cable. One of the things I've learned over the years is that keeping wires bundled properly is important. It prevents getting them pinched and damaged, and at the same time it can be really hard to remember how they go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip this, being very careful not to damage any wires. I'm going to remove that. The one cable we want out is right here. You can see it was kind of folded up in there. And then I am just going to put another zip tie around it, or you could use like a Velcro strap to temporarily hold it until you are ready to reassemble. But that keeps all the stuff bundled up the way it goes. And there's the power supply free. And this thing is heavy. This has got to be a good piece of the weight of the SX-64. This is one heavy beast. All right, so the floppy disk, this is held in by 4 screws. We got 2 on this side. And throughout this video, when you hear some skipping, that is the clutch. I've got it set very loose, so that is not an issue with screws getting stripped. And this is not going to fit in there, so we'll have to use and release that right here. That should just lift off of there. There's floppy drive assembly. Now there's 2 screws here, so I'm going to slide that to the side. Screw here. And then the storage lifts out of its little slots there. Nice little storage bin. See these brackets attached on the side here. And that one is loose, just probably loosened up over the years. So if you ever need to do a full service on a floppy drive, there you have full access to it. That is completely locked up, so we will need to clean that, free it up. There it goes. Yeah. So this is very in need of service, so I will service that before I put it back in. All right, so now once the floppy drive's out, you have access to the keyboard connector. You have access to this, but the screws are facing the wrong way, so that front cover will have to come off to get the adjustment board out. Then next, what I want to do is removing the CRT. So the CRT is held in by 4 screws. There is one right here. Last one's down in here, I'm not sure. Screwdriver's not long enough. So, it's not Sega, but it's my Mega Drive. Okay, so once you have those 4 screws out, you have this cable here, and there are 2 zip ties. I'm going to turn this so that it's visible. So you can see there's 2 zip ties here, and they are the type where, and they're very yellowed, so these may break, but you should be able to pull it in, pop it loose. One funny thing about this machine is that I have found over the years that when I'm working on a machine that I don't have proper service information on, that often the best way to figure out how to take it apart is to figure out how did it go together originally in the factory. These are usually designed to be put together efficiently. But this is a rare machine to me in that it doesn't seem to have a good, clean way to assemble it. I feel like when they're assembling them in the factory, they had to have workers sitting here jigging and trying to get these boards in and out. Not a very efficient way to construct things. Okay, so this just bends up out of the way, and this is already untwisted. We have one connector here. That comes loose. This connector is going down into the bottom of the drive, so what I'm going to do is going to pull this back and lift it up. I want to get it to where you get a good view. And I do not recommend holding it this way when you do it, but for purposes of illustration, I'm going to hold it this way so you can see. Okay, now that this board is loose, we can pull it back. All right, so this cable here, got the black and white one here. Now I'm going to mark that. I've got this yellow one here. Just pull that back a little bit and that comes up easily. And let's see, what else do we have left? One more here. That cable is loose. The rest of these are internal, they don't need to come out. And now the CRT is free. Everything on here looks all right. The board doesn't look horribly burnt anywhere. This may be a fairly low use machine because CRTs usually get really dirty. All right, hey look, it's a chassis. Look, Ma. Now on this one, I'm not going to take the handle off because these caps are still present and they are glued on, so I don't feel like I want to remove them. But once you peel the two caps off, there's just a screw on each side to remove the handle. The front panel, it's like we got two screws here and here. Looks like I need to remove the two bottom feet. Gonna take two screws out here. Then I'm gonna remove the knobs. Five knobs. Now this loose can lift right off, and there is your front cover. With the front cover removed, we can now get to the adjustment board here. There's just the control board, I suppose it is. Floppy drive reset switch. There's two screws here and here. I don't think I need to take that off. And there it is. The machine is now fully stripped. So in the next video, we will clean these parts up and put it back in, and we'll address the fact that the machine wasn't working in the first place. So I think the power supply is fine, but I think we have a problem with the main board. Could be a PLA, could be something else. So I hope you like this video, and you'll see the next part right here as soon as it's ready. In the meantime, check out this video where I fixed a Commodore 64.